President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen.
Trump hasn't spoken to, congratulated, or even mentioned Carney by name since he became prime minister just over a week ago.
Okay.
And now Trump is causing all sorts of confusion about his next blow in his trade war, saying some industries and countries might be spared on April 2nd.
Canada just made a shocking move that could destroy the entire U.S. industry, and the U.S. won't recover. Although President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney just held their first call, it doesn't seem like there would be any negotiations. If anything, Canada is planning another round of tariffs that would increase costs for the average American. Is there going to be any headway in their negotiations, or are we going to see more tit-for-tat tariffs? Before we answer this question, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get started. Donald Trump and Mark Carney hold first call.
Yeah, I think, Omar, the stakes for both are actually very high. I listened with great interest over the past 3 weeks or so to the number of questions posed to Mark Carney. Are you going to take that call? Are you going to make that call? And he didn't really want to wade in, right? He said not until basically our sovereignty is respected. Well, things changed last night. And I can tell you from talking to people behind the scenes, they had felt up until last night that there was a lot of risk involved for Mark Carney in embarking on this call. Like I said, though, that changed with the threat of the imposition of these tariffs.
Since Trump imposed the first tariff against Canada, the two countries have been engaged in a tit-for-tat trade war, and no one knows when it will end. Although there have been tariffs and threats between the two countries, there has actually been no actual negotiations. When the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, came into power, he chose to visit European countries as his first official move. This came as a threat to the U.S., as the normal practice was to visit the United States first. Now, the two countries finally held their first phone call amid the ongoing trade war, although it doesn't seem as productive as they made it sound.
This morning, here is what Donald Trump posted to Truth Social today, the text of what he said, where he actually refers to Carney as Prime Minister. Here it is, speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. I want to point that out. I'll come back to that. An extremely productive call. We agreed on many things. And then it goes on to say that we're going to be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election. And
Donald Trump stated that he had an extremely productive first call with the Canadian Prime Minister. In a Truth Social post, Trump had said that the two leaders would meet immediately after Canada's elections on April 28th to discuss politics, business, and all other factors. Meanwhile, Carney also described the call as very constructive, but he added that he has told the president that Canada would still implement retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. to protect Canadian workers. Normally, Canadian leaders prioritize an early call with the U.S. leader soon after becoming prime minister, but Carney took office back on March 14th, and this is the first time they are having a call. Still, there's still some optimism surrounding this phone call, as the two leaders have agreed to start comprehensive negotiations immediately following the election.
and interesting, I think I want to talk about that a little bit as well. I mean, just look at the difference in tone and language from Donald Trump here, talking about the Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Previously, when talking about Justin Trudeau, of course, it was always the Governor of Canada and various other slights. And then Donald Trump suggesting right there in that post that he believes that Mark Carney is going to win.
Trump's tone of voice when referring to his conversation with Carney was very different from how he used to refer to them before. He has made frequent jabs at Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau, mockingly calling him Government Trudeau. Aside from imposing heavy tariffs on Canada, Trump has also been suggesting that Canada should become the 51st U.S. state. All of these come as the tariff war continues to escalate. Tariff escalation continues.
Matter of fact, if you take out our oil, that you take 4.3 million barrels a day, and we keep things going, outside of that, take the energy to the side, you have a $55 billion surplus, which is good. That's fine. America has a $55 million process, and 55 billion more in trade, and God bless them. We want to expand the trade. We want to create an AMCAN fortress, the two greatest countries in the world. We have what you need. We want to ship more what you need. And I'll be very frank, you're gonna see nothing like this ever in the history of the U.S.
Canada has already threatened and imposed many retaliatory measures against the United States. When Trump first imposed 25% tariffs on almost all Canadian goods, Canada immediately responded with a 25% tariff on more than $20 billion of U.S. imports, including dairy products, meats, grains, wine, beer, footwear, cosmetics, apparel, motorcycles, and certain pulp and paper products. Canada also threatened additional tariffs on more goods if the tariffs don't come off. Former Prime Minister Trudeau called Trump's decisions very dumb, as the two countries were close friends and are now in a state of conflict. The trade war continued when Ontario Premier Doug Ford imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exported to New York, Minnesota, and Michigan. This was expected to impose $100 per month to the electricity bills of Americans. But Trump immediately fired back, threatening a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, higher than the 25% tariff he had already imposed. Ford and Trump had to back off on their threats, and Ford dropped the surcharge. This escalation is showing that there are no winners in a trade war, as Canadian leaders have regularly said during this tit-for-tat trade war with the United States. Now, Mark Carney has said that he would definitely retaliate by April, when Trump's new round of reciprocal tariffs are implemented as he promised on Liberation Day, as he calls it. Carney slams Trump's tariffs.
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. We're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for each other.
Carney has told President Donald Trump that Canada would retaliate against the U.S. with its own tariffs if Trump continues with the promised tariffs on Liberation Day, April 2nd. This would definitely escalate what is already becoming a pretty ugly war between the two countries. When the leaders of the neighboring countries spoke before Liberation Day, Carney had said that although the conversation was constructive, it won't stop Canada from retaliating against Trump's April tariffs. Carney's office had stated that Canada would implement retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods in response to Trump's promised import taxes. But Carney didn't offer any specifics, like the exact tariffs that he would implement against the U.S. and the timing. Mark Carney has said that he is determined to implement retaliatory tariffs and protect Canadian workers and their economy, as long as the U.S. implements its reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd. At least the two leaders sounded hopeful after the call, which is different from what the relationship between former Prime Minister Trudeau and Trump is. Even if the phone call sounds hopeful, Carney just warned that the relationship between Canada and the United States has changed forever. With Trump's behavior towards Canada since the beginning of the trade war, even ignoring their long-standing relations, this comes as no surprise. Canada plans to reduce reliance on U.S.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. In the past week, my government committed to use every dollar collected from our retaliatory tariffs.
Just before his phone call with Trump, Carney had said that Canada would have to dramatically reduce its reliance on the United States. He added that the relationship between the two countries has already darkened and that the old bilateral relationship that they had is over. During a cabinet meeting to discuss Canada's response to Trump's tariffs, Carney told reporters that he is expecting the coming of a pretty different relationship between the two countries. He had said, "It's clear the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner," adding that there would be no going backwards even if they negotiate again to fix the tariff war. Because of this, Carney had chosen to go to France and the United Kingdom and use them as reliable partners instead. Canada and the USA are each other's largest trading partners, and Canada is highly reliant on the USA for its exports. But with Trump's tariffs, Canada has no choice but to look for other alternatives in Europe.
Any attempts to weaken Canada, to wear us down, to break us so that America can own us, that will never happen. And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada.
Carney's statement seems to be a response to Trump's latest threats, as a few hours before he spoke, Trump had announced on social media that the EU and Canada would face massive tariffs, larger than he had planned before if they decide to work together and do economic harm to the U.S. This has caused Canada to realize that they cannot rely on the U.S. instead. PM Carney has said that they need to renegotiate the trade relationship with the United States. He added that they need to dramatically reduce reliance on the U.S. and pivot its trade relationships elsewhere, and they need to do so quickly. It's clear that Canada will no longer be bullied by the U.S., as they have already repeatedly announced that they would respond forcefully to Trump's tariffs. Canada retaliates against Trump's auto tariffs.
The Premier is enthusiastically backing a Canadian response to Trump's tariffs. Doug Ford says he has asked Carney for a Premier's meeting next week to take a Team Canada approach.
I had an opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister, and I'm in full support of preparing retaliatory tariffs, tariff for tariff, but we want to see what he's going to do on April the 2nd.
Ontario is Canada's auto industry hub. Ford says retaliatory tariffs are a necessary response.
In the latest escalations of the tariff war, Trump has announced a new measure aimed at the automobile industry. He has announced a 25% tariff on all foreign car and car parts imports into the U.S., affecting countries like Canada, Mexico, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. In response to this, Mark Carney said that Trump's new decision signals an end to the close bonds between Canada and the U.S., which they enjoyed before. Canada has also added that Trump's new tariffs are a violation of the free trade agreement which was signed between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Carney has also called this a direct attack against Canada's automobile industry, especially since many cars go back and forth the U.S.-Canada border multiple times before the final product is made. These 25% tariffs are expected to add up to $12,000 to the price of a new car in the United States. Nearly 2 million automobiles made in Canada are made for U.S. car companies. Many of these Canadian factories source half of their car parts and raw material from the U.S. So, the international car industry between Canada and the U.S. is intertwined, with crossing across the border multiple times. Protests at U.S.-Canada border.
In Canada, protesters gave their take on tariffs.
We're protesting what's happening to the United States and how we're treating our neighbor.
Organizers say the demonstration is in response to President Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada.
What's happening with our allies, Canada, there's a lot of people very upset.
Earlier this week, President Trump defending the tariffs.
We're going to be getting back some of the wealth that very, very foolish presidents gave away.
Lock him up! Lock him up!
Protesters also called out Trump for his recent remarks about making Canada part of the U.S.
With the heightened tensions between the U.S. and Canada, there have been more protests across the U.S.-Canada border. Canadians have been increasingly fed up with Trump, especially since he has been calling their country the 51st state of the USA and calling their prime minister a governor. The protests come as the Canadians are expecting Trump's reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day. From both sides of the border, the protesters expressed their concern over the tariffs. They added that they are upset with how Trump is treating Canada and are worried about how the tariffs would increase the costs of daily goods. Trump has been defending his tariffs a lot, even saying that we're going to be getting back some of the wealth that very, very foolish presidents gave away. But protesters criticized him for these remarks, even saying that Trump's tariffs might do more harm than good. That's because of the expected inflation and price increases that would affect Canada and the U.S. The relations between the two countries have already been unsteady, with Canadians booing when they hear the American anthem. There has also been a decrease in the number of Canadians traveling to the U.S. Those who already had travel plans to the U.S. have changed them to Mexico or South America. Flight bookings between Canada and the U.S. are now down 70% amid the trade war, and the border is sparse with cars. Canadian travelers are no longer making reservations to go to the U.S., seeing the tariffs as a direct attack on Canadian workers. Ontario Premier plans retaliation.
On that, but I can assure you one thing, we're going to make sure that we inflict as much pain as possible to the American people without inflicting pain on the Canadian population. You know, all he's doing is hurting the American people. He thinks the cost is going to go down for automobiles in the U.S. It's the total opposite.
Doug Ford has accused the Trump administration's tariffs of carrying harsh impacts on American businesses and consumers. Ford has stated that Canada can push back on Trump's tariffs, saying that they would maximize the pain for Americans. He added that although he feels bad for the Americans, it's Trump that is creating the chaos. This comes as Trump implements 25% tariffs on cars and car parts. Ford has said that it's either Canada allows Trump to run them over or fight like they've never fought before. Ford's tariff strategy was recently seen when Canada imposed a tax on electricity imports to 3 American states. This was eventually recanted, but despite that, Ford has said that Canada would oppose the dissection of stable trade agreements. He has added that he spoke to Carney and agrees that Canada needs to stand united. He also expressed support for Canada's retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. and has regularly said that he has means to attack the U.S. Ford has already made it hard for U.S. businesses to get contracts in Ontario and removed American liquor from the shelves. Trump says he will give out tariff breaks.
But President Trump just a couple of minutes ago was asked about the reciprocal tariffs coming on April 2nd. He was asked essentially whether there was any room for negotiation for any countries to escape those tariffs coming next week. And the president replied, quote, "I may give a lot of countries breaks," signaling there that there is certainly negotiation. These are not going to be universal, every country getting hit at once. To me, that's sort of the latest sign that there could be some softening here coming from the White House and the administration as they continue to develop this plan for next week, saying there may be breaks coming for what he says could be many countries.
Trump has said that he might give a lot of tariff breaks coming April 2nd on Liberation Day. He has said that although his tariffs are reciprocal, he might be nice enough to be lenient. This is not the first time there have been talks about tariff breaks. Ford already stated that Canada was working towards getting some exemptions from Trump's new tariffs this April. Although he mentioned tariff breaks, he has also caused the public to be confused as he didn't specify what goods and countries will be included in the exemptions. Trump has already been going back and forth with his tariff decisions, making threats and then retracting his decisions. Even on choosing Liberation Day, it was initially April 1st, then Trump stated that he will be moving it to April 2nd because he didn't want it to be on April Fool's Day or no one would believe him. The U.S. and its economy might not recover after Canada just destroyed its economy with its reciprocal tariffs. Trump's Liberation Day is fast approaching, and Canada is gearing up for more tariffs, which would increase the tensions between the two countries. What do you expect to happen on that day? Let's know your thoughts in the comments.